Welcome to Idea TV News Update. I am Cynthia Basi. We begin with the headlines. Federal government disburses 330 billion naira to 15 million poor households. Federal government and FAO launch $3.14 billion plan to transform Nigeria's agriculture. South Africa moves to adopt global crypto assets transparency rules. South Africa to launch AI-driven electronic travel authorization. And away from Africa, Trump given historic royal welcome as UK pulls out all the stops for second state visit. In health, Ogun State raises alarm over rising diphtheria cases, urges vaccination. Africa loses $200 billion each year to poor sanitation, says World Bank. And in business, AI could boost global trade by 40% by 2040. In sports, South Africa escapes FIFA sanction despite eligibility rule. Now the news in full. The federal government has disbursed 330 billion naira in cash transfers to poor and vulnerable Nigerians as part of efforts to cushion the impact of fuel subsidy removal and exchange rate reforms. Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, announced this in Abuja, explaining that the payments were made through the National Social Safety Net Coordinating Office. According to the minister, about 19.7 million poor and vulnerable households, representing more than 70 million individuals, are captured in the National Social Register. The current disbursement covers 15 million households, with 8.5 million already receiving at least one tranche of 25,000 naira. Some have received 2 or 3 payments, while the remaining 7 million households will be paid before the end of the year. Edon said the program is anchored on a robust system with beneficiaries verified through their national identity numbers and all payments made digitally through bank accounts or mobile wallets. The government says the redesigned scheme offers 25,000 naira monthly for the 3 months, a shift from the previous plan of 5,000 naira for 6 months. Officials say the program will now be included in the annual federal budget to ensure long-term sustainability. Moving on, the federal government, in partnership with the Food and Agriculture Organization, has unveiled the 3B Fund of Rural Traditions. The day included a carriage procession through the historic Windsor Estate and a state banquet with King Charles. Despite the spectacle, Trump's visit remained largely out of sight from the British public, among whom he remains unpopular. Protests erupted in Elizabeth II's term and enjoy a joint Air Force fly-past, a first for any U.S. president. On Thursday, Trump will meet Starmer at the Prime Minister's country residence with discussions expected to touch on sensitive issues despite a boost from GSK's announcement of a $30 billion investment in the U.S. We'll go on a quick break now. The news continues when we return.
Industry Cloud Platforms. Industry cloud platforms offer tailored solutions for specific industries such as healthcare, finance, and manufacturing. These platforms provide specialized tools to meet regulatory compliance requirements while boosting operational efficiency. For example, healthcare cloud platforms streamline patient data management and support care coordination. However, the challenge lies in ensuring data security and interoperability between platforms. The market for industry cloud platforms is expected to reach $83 billion by 2025. Enhancing cybersecurity. As cyber attacks grow more sophisticated, cybersecurity technologies are evolving to defend against them. AI-driven threat detection systems, zero-trust architectures, and advanced encryption methods are becoming the new norm. However, keeping up with rapidly evolving threats is a challenge, especially for industries that handle sensitive data like finance and healthcare. The cybersecurity market is expected to reach $248.26 billion by 2024. But the constant need for innovation and adaptation means businesses need to stay vigilant.
Thank Thank you for still staying with us. This is still the Idea TV News Update. Now the rest of the news continues. In health, Ogun State Commissioner for Health, Dr. Tomi Koka, has raised concern over a rising number of diphtheria cases reported in the state amid Nigeria's ongoing struggle with the disease since its resurgence in 2022. Diphtheria, a bacterial infection previously controlled through childhood immunization, has reemerged in underserved communities, leading to over 1,300 deaths nationwide as of May this year. Dr. Kuka warned that the disease is highly contagious and spreads through coughing, sneezing, or close contact. She highlighted common symptoms such as sore throat, fever, swollen neck, and difficulty in breathing or swallowing, stressing that if left untreated, diphtheria can cause serious health complications or even death. To curb the spread, she urged residents to prioritize vaccination, maintain good hygiene, and avoid close contact with infected individuals and seek early medical attention. Both children and adults who miss earlier vaccines were advised to get immunized immediately. The Commissioner reassured the public that the state government, with support from partners, is actively working to contain the outbreak. She called for public cooperation and vigilance while encouraging residents to rely on official updates and avoid misinformation. Suspected cases can be reported to the State Disease Surveillance Notification Officer or the state epidemiologist through the provided hotlines. The World Bank has sounded the alarm on what it calls a growing global sanitation crisis. The World Bank estimates that every dollar invested in the sector yields up to $7 in economic return. The report highlights that poor sanitation contributes to preventable diseases such as cholera, diarrhea, and typhoid, which kill hundreds of thousands of people each year, many of them children under 5. The World Health Organization has repeatedly stressed that poor sanitation keeps children out of school and adults away from work, reducing productivity and limiting economic growth. The World Bank is calling for urgent and coordinated action. It recommends that governments prioritize sanitation in national policies, invest in climate-resilient urban infrastructure, and adopt circular economy approaches, turning waste into resources, reducing pollution, generating energy, and creating jobs. The report warns that the worsening climate threats such as flooding, drought, and rising sea levels are placing further pressure on fragile sanitation systems. But it adds that smart investment in resilient sanitation can break the cycle, protect human health, boost growth, and make cities more sustainable. The bank concludes with a clear message: achieving universal climate-resilient sanitation is possible, but action must begin now. Moving on to business news, the World Trade Organization says artificial intelligence could boost global cross-border trade by almost 40% by the year 2040, but only if countries act now to close the global digital divide. In its 2025 World Trade Report, the World Trade Organization projects that global trade could grow by up to 37% and global GDP by as much as 13% if AI is widely adopted. The report highlights that AI adoption could lower trade costs, increase productivity, and accelerate economic growth worldwide, but there is a warning. The World Trade Organization says uneven access to AI technology risks deepening the gap between rich and poor nations. Director General Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala stressed that access to AI technologies and participation in digital trade remain highly uneven, particularly for low and middle-income economies. The report notes that if developing nations narrow their digital infrastructure gap with advanced economies by half, their incomes could rise by up to 15%. But tariffs on AI-enabling goods, including semiconductors and digital infrastructure, remain high in many low-income countries, in some cases as much as 45%. The World Trade Organization is calling for inclusive policies, from investment in education and workforce training to more open and predictable trade rules to make AI more affordable and accessible. For Nigeria, the projections present both an opportunity and a challenge. The government has launched a national AI strategy aimed at boosting development and productivity. but analysts warn that without urgent investment in infrastructure and skills, Nigeria may not fully benefit from this global AI-driven trade boom. This is a developing story and we'll continue to follow it closely. And lastly, in sports, South Africa remains free of any punishment in the latest round of FIFA disciplinary actions for the 2026 World Cup qualifiers, despite growing calls for action over the eligibility of midfielder Teboho Mokoena. FIFA has released its latest 4-page sanctions list, confirming punishments against several national teams, but making no mention of South Africa. This development comes after Nigeria and Benin Republic lodged formal complaints over Mokoena's appearance in South Africa's 2-0 victory against Lesotho in March. The Mamelodi Sundowns midfielder had already been booked twice in the qualifiers, first against Benin in November 2023 and again against Zimbabwe in June 2024. According to FIFA's rules, players who accumulate 2 yellow cards across different matches are automatically suspended for the next game. Critics argued that Mokoena should have missed the Lesotho clash and that South Africa should forfeit the 3 points, which would be recorded as a 3-0 technical defeat. If such a decision were applied, Bafana would drop from 17 to 14 points in Group C, placing them level with Benin and narrowing Nigeria's gap to just 3 points. Nigeria currently sits third with 11 points with 2 matches remaining. Elsewhere on FIFA's sanctions list, Qatar received a warning in June for team misconduct. Indonesia was warned over security issues at a qualifier, and Argentina were fined $20,000 and handed a 2-match suspension earlier this year. The lack of any reference to South Africa stands in contrast to the case of Equatorial Guinea, who were docked 6 points after FIFA and the Court of Arbitration for Sport ruled that striker Emilio Nsue was ineligible. That ruling dramatically altered Group H, boosting Namibia's chances of progression. For Nigeria, a sanction against South Africa could revive hopes of automatic qualification or a place in the playoffs as one of Africa's best runner-ups. The Super Eagles must still face Lesotho and Benin in the final round of matches for now. Bafana remain top of Group C with their path to a first World Cup since 2010 still in their hands. And that's all we have for you on Idea TV News Update. But before we go, here's a recap of the headlines. We brought to you news that federal government disburses 330 billion naira to 15 million poor households. We also brought to you news that federal government and FAO launched $3.14 billion plan to transform Nigeria's agriculture. We brought to you news that South Africa moves to adopt global crypto asset transparency rules. And still in South Africa launched AI-driven electronic travel authorization. And away from Africa, Trump giving a historic royal welcome as UK pulls out all the stops for second state visit. In health, Ogun State raises alarm over rising diphtheria cases and urges vaccination. Africa loses $200 billion each year to poor sanitation, says World Bank. And in business, AI could boost global trade by 40% by 2040, says World Trade Organization. And lastly, in sports, South Africa escapes FIFA sanction despite eligibility rule. Do not forget to follow us across all our social media platforms at Idea Television. My name is Cynthia Bassi. Thank you for watching.